Leo Reporter app to easily prepare and send your observations from the field. The network includes topic experts in local and indigenous knowledge, as well as scientists. Observations are compared to identify emerging trends and posted to web-based maps. Do you have a story about an unusual environmental event? You can share your knowledge and help us to understand our changing world.
Okay, so that's what Leo is. So I guess, why Leo? Leo was started in Alaska. It rolled out in 2012, and the reason it was developed in Alaska was it was developed to be a tool to help tribal health systems and local observers to share information about climate change and other drivers of environmental change. So as you can appreciate, communities up in Alaska are going to be noticing changes of climate change a lot quicker than maybe the rest of us. So this was a great tool that they have taken and they've run with it. So just to let you know, today is a 1-year anniversary of us launching Leo in BC. So why do we bring it to BC? So as working for First Nations Health Authority and as environmental health officers, we were hearing a lot of questions that went beyond the scope of our expertise. So maybe we've captured this moose and there's this weird lesion, and is it safe to eat because this is our food? And so the idea is you post an observation, you get linked up potentially with a consult for an expert, can provide some resources, and it's just great stuff. So let's just dive in and I'll show you, because that's where the power of Leo is. And just to say thank you to all the presenters and also Helen for bringing me here, because really you made this presentation easy because you've provided me with examples of how I can demonstrate to you that maybe Leo can be a tool in our pockets here in BC. So you're going to sign in. It's free for membership. So go to here, and if you want to contact me, then copy my address down. All right, look at that fantastic hair day I had. So just to let you know, when you're developing your profile, when your husband says you're having a good hair day, go grab a selfie right now and use that. Anyways, so here's me. You're gonna develop your own profile, and I want to show you some important points for this. You can put as little or as how much you want to put into it. So if you want to put your photo, your contact information, all of the information is housed within Leo. It's not like it goes live to Google and anyone can find you if you're part of the Leo network. The other thing that I just want to highlight here is that this is kind of unique. So you'll say what sort of basis of knowledge you have, if it's scientific, local, or indigenous. So this is a beautiful platform that allows these levels of knowledge to share and to learn and to observe of all these changes that are occurring, and there's been a lot that Alaska's demonstrated that they can do. Topics of interest is also interesting. So there's a lot of different areas that you can highlight if you're interested in them. So a bunch of different categories. And then also there's newsletter subscriptions and all of that. So let's just get into an observation. So you go into search. Oh, here, I'll just tell you. At the beginning here, every point here is an observation. So you can click on it and get more information. So what's showing up here is the most recent observation that was posted up in Alaska. Okay, so let's say that we're interested in salmon and parasites. Let's just do salmon first. So if it's just salmon in general, maybe you're a salmon expert. So you're gonna come up with a whole bunch of information. And as you can see, you can filter it on the right-hand side if you have certain topic areas, or you can just start to maybe just look through and see what the topic areas are that people have put in here. So as you can see, it ranges a lot for salmon. So there is one in particular that I want to show, salmon and parasites. So the observer said, we caught a bunch of salmon, and we noticed a bunch of lesions on the inside and on the outside of the salmon. So they took pictures. So this was the inside lesion that you can see, that little pus pocket in the middle. And then they took pictures of the other salmon that have lesions on the outside. So they posted this observation. Really, in a nutshell, what it says is, we're noticing, and is this concerning? Should we be consuming this? Because a lot of the salmon had these growths on the inside and outside. And so you've got over here, the contributor is the observer here. And then Ted Myers was the consult. So he was the expert that was, leaned to and said, do you have any information to provide? There was actually 2 consults that were done, and I'm not going to read through all of it, but really the gist was, he said, oh yes, this parasite happens in the juvenile stages of the salmon, and this is what happens, and it can occur in them, but it's not harmful to humans to consume this particular parasite. And then another consult, which I really loved, is that they provided some good public health messaging in the sense of, with all fish, they give the proper cooking conditions and what temperature that you should cook to, just to kill off any parasites that might be of issue. And then they provide some links. And then, so even Leo piped in and gave a good reference document. So right here you can provide a link, and you can go to what all of the common diseases are for wild and cultured in fish in Alaska. So that's one example. But how did you guys help me today? So One Health. In Alaska, they've got numerous years of data now, and so they're collecting quarterly together different departments and agencies, and they're looking at the data points and seeing if there's trends. And they actually have acted upon things, looking for mitigation strategies or adaptation, or maybe just the identification that a range of a species has completely changed that blew the minds of the researchers that were following them. Okay, so that was one, right? This could be a platform where we all come together and talk and learn together. Climate change. There was the comment in the opening that Aaron had said that new species or rare or never seen before species that might be coming to BC. Could the Leo Network be an opportunity for us to start sharing those observations? What they've done in Alaska is maybe there is this species of bird and they're just like, oh, we've got a dodo here, and they're like, no, there's no dodos. And so what they've done is they've gone to the network of Leo members, said, here's this species of animal, have you seen it? And then they started to get like ping, 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 and then a new geographical range of where they're actually going to has been identified. And so there's been a lot of excitement, research has gone, and there's been partnerships, and there's been a lot of trust. And really, let's get down to the basics. The individual at the local level that is being impacted now has a place to have their voice. And potentially, instead of just wondering, is this a new invasive species? You can pose that question, and potentially there could be a link to a consult and then a relationship, and just right there, information being shared. The purpose of this is not to rebuild programs that other agencies have and such. It's to hopefully help marry them. Ticks, Lyme disease, okay, projects. Oh gosh, projects, guys, here. So I know, as just being cognizant of time, in BC, we launched it with the purpose of focusing on First Nation communities, obviously, as First Nations Health Authority. But this is for everyone. Why do I present this to you today? Well, we did have a fantastic presentation, I think it was in September, on chronic wasting disease in BC. So Kate Nelson, she came in and she presented at one of our webinars. In BC, we have monthly webinars. So if you have a program, if you have something that you would like to bring awareness to and get information out, please let us know. Because you might be able, we would welcome you to do a presentation for Leo. Maybe even if there was a project idea. So what's this project idea? So the idea is if there's certain surveillance that you might want to do, such as chronic wasting disease in BC, totally need to know when it crosses over from Alberta over to BC. this potentially could be an opportunity to start a project. So in it, as you can see on the left-hand side, the lead organization can put a description of what's the purpose of this project, what are their partners, if there's any observing guidance, even if there was sampling protocols or information, that could all be embedded in this project part. And the thing is that any time that there is, because Kate is the lead here, anytime that there's an observation that's linked to this, Kate's going to be notified about this. So it's a way for her to interact directly with individuals that might be questioning, did I come across an ungulate that might have chronic wasting disease? So that's an idea of projects. But then again, I mean, it was low awareness of disease that we heard earlier when we had the presentation on ticks. I approached him and I said, hey, would you like to come and present at Leo? Because maybe we can start to bring that education and awareness. Because, I mean, I didn't know today that there was that particular tick that if you just pluck them out and then you start to feel better all of a sudden. You know, you made comments earlier saying that there was cases that we figure are happening, but maybe they're underreported because it's not a reportable disease. So could this be an avenue of maybe building some awareness? Also, temperature increases. We heard earlier with West Nile virus that it will increase the amplification and the transmission of West Nile virus. So could there be an opportunity again for there to be presentations, projects, or partnerships that are building here? Robins can help with West Nile, and like that, I didn't know that. So again, there's a lot of information and a lot of ways that Leo might be able to be used here. So I'm gonna stop there. Phone app, yes, thank you, Helen. So obviously the internet doesn't follow us everywhere, and up in Alaska there was a lot of hunters and people that maybe were on the ground and they didn't have access to internet right there. There is a Leo Reporter app, so you can download it and you can start to input all of the information that's needed for the observation. And then when you actually get to a space, then it can be uploaded onto the network. There are so many levels to Leo, and like 10 minutes cannot do justice. So please come to me if you've got any interest, any questions. But I think what I'd like to do is take this opportunity to ask all of you. And first, to let you know, it is free. The idea is this is an individual membership, right? It's not like I'm Dionne and I'm representing First Nations Health Authority. I made an observation about the extreme flooding, the unprecedented flooding that was happening in the Okanagan for Okanagan Lake. I was born and raised in the Okanagan. It was unusual, so I got to put a post on Leo, right? All of you, it could be just hiking and you've been hiking that trail for a very long time, but then also notice this new fungi that's there. Take a picture. Maybe that's a way to start that dialogue and such. It's cool, I'm excited about it, so I'm gonna ask you, do you see any value in a potential platform such as this? And if so, what is that value that you might see value added? Or do you have concerns? And again, what are some of those challenges and concerns? We are just kind of word of mouth at this point. So I challenge all of you, please become Leo members. We are trying to build our database of experts to turn to as well. But having said that, you also can post individually on changes of unusual change that you might be seeing. Any questions?
So, yeah, are there any questions? Really? Come on.
Thanks, Dionne, for that. You mentioned Lyme disease. That I think of one of the proposals that we're just working on had a component around citizen science, around detecting either incursions of new ticks or expansion of existing ticks within the province. Are there any examples of that?
Perfect, thank you so much. So yeah, this is where you start to think, well, is there anything about ticks? So I'm gonna take you to my favorite tick post. Heather, I'm actually going to start following her. So here's another cool feature. She's done some really good observations, and I think that she's a brilliant storyteller. So I'm going to start following her. So what that means is that every single time that she posts another observation, or if she's a contributor, I'll be notified. I'll be emailed about her next post. So basically, she lives over in Vermont, and she's lived there for a significant period of time. I'm not going to read through all of it. She basically says, I've been hiking this spot for so long, and I've never really seen any ticks. She went out for a walk with her dog and literally found like 20, 30 plastic, like they were just pulling ticks off of them and off of her. And she says in the post, this is an epidemic, what's going on, what has changed, right? And so there's not Lyme disease posts per se, but the thing is that in her post, then it provides a brilliant opportunity for education and information to be provided about maybe what's going on, or if there's any links, or even if there's a suggestion of if you're expressing any symptomology, please see your physician as soon as possible. Leo becomes whatever we want Leo to be in BC. So why is it BC Leo? Well, we're a hub. There are other hubs. Alaska was the first hub. There's Northwest Territories is a hub. We're a hub on the BC. We've got Washington right down to the Baja Peninsula. So like it's kind of cool to even think that we've got Leo observers from the very top of Alaska right down to the Baja Peninsula. That whole thing. So it's kind of that sharing of information. Sorry, I totally went on a tangent there, Erin.
Anybody else?
Hi, Dionne. Thank you for the presentation. So, from what we can see on the map right now, it seems like it's the information is coming in at a pretty good pace for everybody to keep track of and moderate. I was just wondering what kind of controls are in place to moderate the system. What I'm thinking of particularly is a few years ago when quite a few years ago now, when the Fukushima disaster happened in Japan. After that, there was a huge die-off of starfish along the west coast of North America, and there was a lot of speculation around tying the radioactive waste and radioactivity along the west coast of North America to those observations. And it was later completely debunked. And so I was wondering what kind of controls or moderators are in place in the system.
Thank you so much for that question. So when somebody posts an observation, it doesn't automatically go live. It is dealt with the Leo Hub editor. So Tom Oakey is our BC Leo Hub editor. He's based out of Victoria. So really it's a matter of that's where that control, I guess, is, quote unquote, in deciding if this is a good observation. Up in the About section, it does provide like Leo Network, and it gives a lot of information of what makes a good observation. And there are some other tips and tricks. If it's kind of bare bones, the Leo editor will work with the person who's posted the observation to try to flesh it out and maybe make it the best observation possible. Does that help, that question? For controls. So it's not just going live. And the other thing is this isn't, individuals can't just Google search this. You have to be a member of Leo to be able to actually go through the network and look at it. So controls, I guess I don't know if that answers the question for your control.
Yeah, partly. It sounds like that's more to deal with people who have incomplete
Yeah.
My concern was more around
Good. And I mean, it's definitely for liability. I mean, there's been concerns about how can you make comments about the fish is safe to eat, right? There's some liability to that. Basically, like Leo is not about replacing your physician or replacing the experts. It's an observation, right? And so if that's where we welcome other contributors, other individuals to say, actually, that's not quite right. And there have been times where there's been a dialogue between contributors, experts that say, well, my hypothesis is this. And then another one might weigh in and say, yeah, no, that's great, but I actually think it might be this. Sometimes they're just a standing observation where we haven't actually been able to link someone who might be able to give the feedback that's needed.
I think I saw someone over here.
Yeah, I had the same question about the, like you see, quality assurance of your information that you are, like people are putting there. And some people, especially for Lyme, I do not want it to go through all those history of Lyme because there are so many speculation and other things. So, and for me that I'm doing this tick surveillance for last 20 years. And some people say that, oh, there are like hundreds of thousands of ticks and falling from everywhere. I say, okay, submit the ticks to us and we'll do it. And we don't get a single tick from there. So it happened like that as well. So that like hearing a story and getting the true things is two different things. So that's why I think that whoever asked the question, that was my question too, that how the Leo will put like accurate information out so that it is authentic site, number one. And number two, that how many members do you have so far?
Wonderful, thank you. So that's where it would be absolutely phenomenal to have you as one of our pool of experts, where, I mean, definitely as an editor or just even being one of the leads for Leo, we're not the experts. So it's really trying to find who's gonna be able to provide that, right? So information that, like, for observations that are put out, I'm not the editor, Tom is, and actually up in Alaska too, they heavily rely on reaching out to the experts to vet that and to make sure that the info that provided is there. When you were saying that people say there's thousands of ticks but we're not getting any, that would be a perfect opportunity to say, okay, we need samples sent to here, and this is why, and just providing those resources, because yeah, it's like caught a fish and it was this big and then it's like this big, right? It can be blown out. So it is anecdotal, it is citizen science, we do recognize that. But I think what's beautiful about Leo is that through story, there's a lot in that, right? And so to just completely dismiss it as it being, oh, well, it's just anecdotal, right? And that's the power of it, is what can make better observations? Are there some certain checkpoints that you'd like to see in place? That's why I said is we can build Leo with the way that we want. What was your second question? Yes, thank you. So currently we have 166 members in BC. And over the last year, there were 77 observations that were posted. And there's also a neat little feature in Leo where news articles, pertinent news articles, can also be highlighted, especially if they're with that climate change relation and human health and whatnot.
I think we'll shut it down now and we'll see if we can get, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
We'll see if we can get our other